Hi friends. On Friday, you read chapter 3, or that was your assignment. And as we were reading chapter 3, you were paying attention to the elements of fantasy. So these are the things that can't happen in real life. And one of the elements is Julie's visions. And the other element are the masks. And those happen on the very last 2 pages of the chapter. I asked you to pick one of them and write about it. So your job today is I am going to reread the chapter because we know that rereading helps us understand better, and that's a great strategy. I'm also going to pause along the way and just check in to fix the fuzziness and say the who and the what, which you should be using one of your strategies, either fix the fuzziness or read, cover, remember, or tell, or making those picture summaries in your head, okay? So as you're reading, as you're listening today, I want you to pay attention to Julie's vision, and I want you to pay attention to the masks, as well as the plot. Where are they going and why are they going there? And then if you already wrote in your Google document about one of the story elements, excellent job. I want you to add to it. So I either want you to go back today and I want you to write down more details about that. I may have even asked you in your Google Doc, can you tell me more? So we should be writing at least 4 sentences. Or I want you to go back and I want you to do the assignment. If you would like to challenge yourself and write about the other story element, the other element of fantasy, so you're writing about both the visions and the masks, super job. I do know a couple of you had an assignment from your classroom teacher on Friday, and it was a little confusing about what to do. So I'm not giving you a new writing assignment today. I want you to finish Friday's assignment or add to Friday's assignment. Sorry, I had to relocate to a quieter place of my house. So those are your 2 assignments today as you begin to listen to this chapter. Another thing that we are going to talk about in our book club tomorrow is going back to drawing those symbols as we read. And I think we're going to talk about those every time we meet, just to keep track of what's happening in the story. So be ready tomorrow to talk about what symbols we would put, and I will be ready to share mine with you. So at the end of this chapter, we'll talk about maybe 1 or 2 things we would add to our symbol chart, okay? So chapter 3, the sandwich is there. May luck and speed be with you, called Max from the giant castle gate. Dawn is but an hour away. The band of 3 children and 1 imp bade farewell from atop of their team of heavily packed pilkas. They galloped due east toward the rolling dunes of the Crimson Desert. No sooner had they left the green plains than the land turned scrubby and sandy. Remember, they're going and they're looking for that 1 drop of the elixir that can help Eric. We have to be careful here, said Kia. Now that Spar has joined Gethwig, his nins have returned to their evil ways. We may meet some today. Lord Spar with several jewels in Gethwig's crown of wizards. The others were Prince Ungast and Princess Nefu, Kia's evil opposite. So there's a new character we just learned about. There's an evil princess. Although lately the Nins have helped the kids, they had followed Spar in joining Gethwig's war against Droon. Once the little caravan passed the abandoned dust hills of Parjaba, they entered the vast trackless sea of sand that fringed the Crimson Desert. Sometimes they galloped along the crests of massive dunes. Other times they hid quietly in the valleys between them while the bands of roving beasts and swarms of wingwolves moved overhead. I'm going to pause real quick. I'm going to do a little fix the fuzziness here, because when we're reading about the desert, there's a lot of desert words that might be confusing. As they're going, I'm noticing that they're going past massive sand dunes. Those are like big sand hills. And sometimes they're hiding in the valleys, the low points, so that when the wing wolves go by or other beasts that could be bad, they can hide from them. So that dunes are like hills, valleys are the low parts. They're traveling in something called a caravan. A caravan is when you have a group of things traveling together. You can have a caravan of cars, you could have a caravan of camels, you can have a caravan of horses. They have a caravan of pilkas, and they have a group traveling together. That's what that means. Okay, I'm going to go on now. Soon, if we're lucky, we shall see the sand children, said Hob. Now remember, Hob is that imp who is traveling with them. The little sprites are said to flit around like ghosts, tales of their masterful thievery around. They are legendary. Neil laughed. According to you, everything is legendary. Are we legendary? The imp giggled to himself. Perhaps some of us. Only the future will tell. The future. That morning, Juliet had what she thought was a vision. Okay, so we're paying attention to this vision. But all she did was predict the past. How useful was that? She rubbed the back of her hand and the scratch tingled even more. Neil laughed. Hey, I just remembered something. Did you know that you can never go hungry in a desert? Why not? Asked Kia. An image of Neil telling the same joke flashed through Julie's mind. She knew the answer to the riddle because of the sand witch is right there, right? The sand witch is there? Hob chuckled. Yes, quite. Neil grumbled. I just heard that riddle yesterday and you weren't even with me. How did you already know? Julie blinked. Neil was right. She hadn't been with Neil when he had heard that joke. She was having another vision of the past. So we just learned something. Julie's visions aren't of the future. Julie has visions of things that have already happened, but she isn't there when they're happening. Just like when Galen got taken away, she had that vision. She wasn't there, but it had already happened. And like Neil's joke. So that's a fantasy thing. We don't have visions of other people in the past doing things. That's something in fantasy. The Pilkas rode to the crest of the tall dune, and the breeze changed direction. Warm and scented with a touch of burning wood, it moved over them, rustling their robes and scarves and jingling their tiny saddle bells ever so slightly. Well, exclaimed Hob, there may or may not be sandwiches, but there certainly is a lot of sand. And if Hob is correct, it is red. The desert before them stretched for miles and miles. Its dunes were massive, that means that they're really big hills, and high, and red is the evening sun. The crimson desert, whispered Kia. I'm going to pause. Crimson is a color of red, so that's why it's called the crimson desert. The sand is a red color, so you can picture that in your head. The site of the legendary Koomba, said Hob, now lost forever. Lost or not, Julie couldn't help but picture the towering empire that once stood among the curious red dunes. In her mind, tall domes, fallen over time, resumed their upright shapes. Bridges rose out of the sand, linked to one another as far as the eye could see. Towers coiled themselves up higher and higher in the darkening sky. Nothing is left, said Kia, but a wasteland of sand. No, thought Julie. It is in my mind playing tricks on me again. I see it all. So I'm going to pause. Julie's having another vision of the past. She can picture this empire, this castle, this fortress that had been there called Koomba that no longer exists. Nobody else can see this. But the instant she blinked, her image of old Koomba collapsed under the waves of whirling sand buried beneath centuries of desert, fading into nothing. So it didn't really collapse. It's just her vision went away. Only rolling red dunes remained. Julie sighed. Koomba was beautiful. I see the trading post, said Neil. Hurry! The little band rode quickly on the foot of an enormous dune, what winds had blown into the shape of a star. Just behind it stood a ramshackle little building made of planks, from which all the tiniest flecks of paint had been scoured away. That means it had been painted and suddenly all the paint is off of it because the wind has blown so hard against it. So if you're doing those pictures in your head, you can picture this really worn down little shack that they're going to. That's a trading post where you can go get supplies. A battered sign hung on the outside. Cantina du Koomba. The canvas canopy, worn ragged by the constant desert wind, hung low over the small front door and flapped on its squeaky hinges. Okay, so you can see on that page, there are the Pilkas, and in the distance you see that worn down shack. You could be following along. I'm on pages 40 and 41, about to turn the page. They heard gruff voices yelling from inside the clatter of thrown furniture and breaking glass. Do you think poison traders are in there right now? Asked Neil. Perhaps, said Hob. Whatever they trade, they are evil, no doubt, and that is why you shall thank Hob for being so clever. Some travelers pack food. Hob packs masks. He dug his slender paws into the leather bags draped over the saddles and produced 3 masks. They were exquisitely detailed in bright blue, silver, and yellow. So I'm going to pause. Remember I told you the other element of fantasy we're paying attention to are the masks. So you're going to want to listen really closely about these and figure out why did Hob, he's the imp that they had met in the last chapter who came with them, he's a good guy, why did he pack these masks? They will make you appear as beasts and traitors, he said. Since Gethwig's armies frequent this part of the world, you must blend in. He held out the mask. I'm going to pause again. So they had said before that they had seen beasts and they thought traders were in the shack. So those are people, or not people, but things common to the desert area. So if they looked like a beast or a trader, Gethwig's armies wouldn't recognize them and they wouldn't do anything. So they're trying to blend in. Where's your mask? Asked Kia. Hob smiled. Hob is an imp. He doesn't have much to overcome. Take one. Julie took the yellow mask and slipped it on. Moments later, she was tall, very tall, had 4 arms, a bulbous body, 3 tails, and a bumpy chin with 3 points on it. Okay, picture that in your head. Very tall, 4 arms, a bulbous body, 3 tails, and a bumpy chin with 3 points on it. Neil laughed. Hey, good looking. He took the delicate silver mask and slipped it on. Will this mask make me into a strong one? Oh, you'll be strong, said Hob, but you won't be one. What? No! The moment the mask fell over his face, Neil's head grew outward and split into 2. So Neil has 2 heads. Then each nose grew straight out of the ended in a fuzzy bush of white hair. I hate my mask. I want the other one. Mine, said Kia, snatching the blue mask. Kia slipped it on. Hob grinned. The mask gives you 1 tiny foot, 5 giant ears, and 3 noses. Or is it 3 ears, a tiny nose, and 1 giant foot? As it happened, Kia had 3 feet, 7 ears, and a flat nose the color of mustard. She was also covered in gray fur. Yours is so much better, Neil grumbled. Why do I always get the mask that doesn't work right? You do have an odd face, said Hob. I do not, said Neil. Guys, said Kia, time is wasting. Let's go in, and remember we're beasts, and we're traitors. Be tough, okay? Let's go. Taking one last moment to get into character, because now they have to act like these beasts and traitors that they look like. The 4 friends growled and grumbled and swaggered their way into the tavern door. So they're going in to that shack they saw, which is the trading post. And remember, they're there looking for that one missing drop of the elixir that can save their friend Eric, and they only have 5 days to get it to him. Okay, so now that the chapter's over, you have 2 jobs. 1, go back to your Google Doc, and if you didn't answer the question on Friday, pick one of the fantasy elements and write about it. Write at least 4 sentences, tell details, tell all about it. If you're doing the visions, maybe you want to talk about what were the visions she's having. What is she seeing? If you're doing the masks, describe what they did. What did the kids look like once they put them on? Why? Okay, that's the kind of answers we want to write in our Google Docs. Not just a 4-word sentence. We want to give details. And you can always go back to your book many, many times. The second thing I want you to think about for book club tomorrow is when, at the end of this chapter, what would you sketch on our drawings? I will go back and sketch some symbols for the first 2 chapters to catch us up. And you can use my symbols or you can change them. And then I'm going to ask you, and we're going to talk about what would we sketch for chapter 3. Would we sketch masks? Would we sketch maybe a sand dune? Would we sketch like 3 little stick figure pilkas walking like a caravan in the desert? What would we sketch to help us remember what the kids are doing in this chapter? What do we think is important to hold on to so we can remember the plot of the story? We're going up that story mountain and we need to remember the important parts, okay? I hope you have a great Monday. I will see you for book club tomorrow at 1:30. And remember, on Tuesday, you will have a reading assignment, but you will not have a writing assignment, because that will be your Newsella day. I hope you have a fabulous day. See ya.